Yeah, so let's start. As I told that we will be now discussing on the 8th plan and 9th plan, and then 10th, 11th, 12th. So we are left with only 4 to 5 plans to discuss, and then after that we will summarize that how we have progressed. I will be showing you some indicators that how we have done well on certain indicators and how we have improved, and where there is a scope for improvement and how we are still working on. So, after the political instability, 8th 5-year plan was not implemented, as we have already mentioned, and India had 2 annual plans for the year 1990-91. 8th 5-year plan, the duration was from 1992 to 1997, but if you compare with the previous lecture, then you find that most of the things that we have discussed, it was taken during this plan. So, the target was to achieve 5.6% growth, but 8th plan achieved the growth rate of 6.8%, which is much better, and it gave better results, and this was possible because of what we discussed in the previous lecture, that how different measures help the economy to boost up, and then most of the indicators were looking quite attractive. The focus of this plan on the economic restructuring measures that included agriculture, industry, trade, everything, and then the focus was also on reviving the investment outlook of the country, utilizing the savings and all. So, the major changes that we saw during this plan was the role of public sector. So, the public sector declined, and even in terms of savings, it was even in terms of investment, the share of investment in public sector declined by 34%, which means that government was completely focusing on the revival of or going into the mode of privatization. So, the more and more private firms were given importance compared to the public sector firms, and this was reflected with the public investment figure also. So, the 9th plan, which had the duration from 1997 to 2002, was launched with the growth target of 6.4%, but here the actual achievement rate was only 5.4%. The motto of this plan was the growth with social justice and equity, and it was decided that it will be based now more on the social transformation, the redistribution of income and wealth across different strata. So, that is why this became one of the debated topic during that time, and opponents and proponents were sharing their views for and against. The market oriented development continued even during 9th 5-year plan, and private sector was it was allowed to participate in any activity, any sector except 3 that government had reserved. Those are strategic and atomic and environmental sensitive activities. For the first time, a special action plan was attached with the 9th plan document, and it was attached by the Prime Minister. So, it was for the first time it was decided, it was reflected on a policy document that Prime Minister attached a note with the policy document, with the planning document, and this particular SAP was focused on food and agriculture, infrastructure, education, health and drinking, information technology. So, these were the priorities of the government at that time. During this plan, agriculture and manufacturing also saw a bit decline, because the transformation was happening from public to private, and it was not very smooth, but services sector took a leap here, and then it registered a higher growth, and there was a whole lot of focus on revival of this. By this time, we also had a lobbying group working for the services sector to expand, and they were given a lot of incentives. Here agriculture sector also, because of the poor monsoon, it was not a favorable number generated from this sector. In terms of external shocks, Asian financial crisis at that time had a huge impact on the India economy, and our business cycle was also trapped by this. So, there was some kind of contagion effect from this. Global outlook was also not good because of this. There was a debate also on hot capital, whether this hot capital should be allowed or not, though we had allowed the FIIs with the 24% equity, but at that time it was a hotly debated topic that whether a developing economy should participate in attracting hot capital or not, which is called for an institutional investor, and these developments also impacted the export outlook of the industrial sector, which resulted in the decline in the outlook. Then we also had domestic disturbances, Kargil war, we had a cyclone in some parts of the Odisha, earthquake in Gujarat, and these also developments also thwarted the better prospect for India's economic growth and development. And despite a special action plan, we were not able to achieve that much our goal. The 10th plan, which started from 2002 to 2007, had the target growth of 8%, and it also achieved the growth rate of 7.6%. It also focused on 11 indicators that included everything. So now you can compare from the first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, that how the objectives are shifting and how the priorities of the government were also changing, and how this became one of the important dimensions to look for. For example, 11 indicators included a gender gap, human resources, infant and maternal mortalities rate, drinking water, sanitation and cleaning of polluted rivers, which means that we are now, instead of thinking vertically, we were also thinking horizontally in terms of expanding or protecting our natural resources, right. So, this is one of the important point to note, that how the planning process evolved over a period of time and how it incorporated different dimensions of reviving not only the economy, but also thinking about the distribution of income and wealth, and how the poor or the lower income strata of the society can be can participate and can be made can be made so much can be given opportunity to participate in the mainstream economy or mainstream society. So, emphasis was given on the involvement of Panchayati Raj institutions. For the first time in this plan, one of the major indicators that are always asked in the exams and all, that which plan was the which plan had given a specific targets to the states which were laggard at the as compared to the national parameters, and which were forward in terms of national parameters. So, to make sure that there is equitable development across states, for the first time state wise targets were set to monitor the balanced development, and it continued. So, now you if you go nowadays, now it is more in an organized manner. So, if you go on the RBI website, you will find that you have state level indicators also, even on development parameters. So, it started because we started collecting information on state level indicators also, so that we can see clearly that which sector is lagging behind, or which sector has the high deviation from the national average, and which sector is having low, so that it can be worked out, and further incentives will be given, or further monitoring mechanism will be developed, so that those states may also come on average or may go beyond average. There was one more historical development that took place, was the announcement of Fiscal Responsibility and Budget Management Act. It became Act in 2003, but it was introduced in 2000. So, Fiscal Responsibility and Budgetary Management, FRBM Act is one of the landmarks achievements in India's in the domain of public finance, because it created a specific target for the center that they cannot bypass that target. So, it was decided that the fiscal deficit target should be set at 3%. Which was later, because some reason it moved to 3.5%. Then again, time to time there is always a change in FRBM Act, but it has been always a difficult time for the country like India, which is of developing nature and which has so much of responsibility to take care different economic indicators. It has rarely been a chance when the government has been able to meet this FRBM target, but in a more generalized sense, it can be called as major development, because it gave a government particular target that they should be focusing on. So, there is a whole lot of debate on this, whether this FRBM Act was supposed to be one of the major developments, or it was a simple imposition of a norm. So, this is also one of the important things to note, and later government has gone for further modification. Now, under FRBM Act, states were also given targets. States were more efficient in implementing this act than the center. So, there is a whole lot of debate on this. Even economic survey of 2016-17 and or 2017-18 had given a complete detailed account of this, that how different states have done on these parameters. Then 11th 5-year plan 2007 to 2012. So, this 11th 5-year plan is having a lot of importance again, and it had the target growth rate of 9%, but it achieved the growth rate of 8% because of the different circumstances that India had to pass through, and during this period India also had gone for a general election, plus we had a 2008-9 global economic crisis that also led to the deterioration of the economic health of the country. So, and the plan target was towards faster and more inclusive growth. So, the target was set in this manner. So, I have tried to indicate on 4 parameters. One was the investment and domestic savings, because in this plan the focus was on this, that there should be a higher saving, and at the same time it should result in higher investment. So, investment rate as a percentage of GDP, 10th plan 32.4% it was. In case of 11th plan, it was decided that it should be 36.7%. Domestic saving rate as a percentage of GDP, it was decided that it should be 30.9, and it should increase to 34.8. It was envisaged. Current account deficit, it was also decided, but then it increased 1.9. Right. Incremental capital output ratio, it was also 4.3 in case of 10th plan. In case of 11th plan, it became 4.1, which is good. Lower values means it is you require less amount of capital to produce output, and GDP growth rate was 7.5 and target was 9. Here current account deficit as compared to 10th plan, it was higher because of it was expected that the economy may face awkward moments, and that is why this was kept in mind. Then if you compare the sector wise growth, so 8th plan, 9th plan, 10th plan, 11th plan, you will find that in this plan we had a agriculture sector which had recorded a higher growth compared to 9th and 10th plan. In 9th plan it was 2.44, in 10th plan it was 2.30, but in 11th plan it recorded a higher growth 3.7% thanks to good monsoon, but it did not meet the target of 4%. So, the numbers in bracket are the targets set by the plan, and the values which are not in bracket are the actual numbers achieved. So, in case of industry, the target was 10 to 11%, but it achieved the 7.2%. Services, it was 9 to 11, but it achieved the growth rate of 9.7%, and total of course it was 8%, the target was 9%. So, you can see that services sector has the consistent performance. So, from 8th plan, 9th plan, 10th plan, service sector performed well. So, from 7.28, 7.87, 9.30 and 9.7, but industry had a volatile moment. So, in case of 8th plan it achieved 7.29, and then in case of 11th plan it achieved 7.2. 10th plan had the best performance in terms of industry, and it achieved the growth rate of 9%, and that was because at that time in India had started gaining the benefit what it was introduced in terms of post reform period, but after that there was a further correction and this particular number came down. So, I think with this table it is clear that we should spend some more time understanding the services sector. So, maybe I will have one particular session on service sector, how and which all measures help this particular sector to become one of the leading sectors of our country. Then this was the last plan post independence. So, 12th 5-year plan that was envisaged that it will continue till 2017, but in 2015 we had a Niti Aayog, and this Niti Aayog idea is continuing, and we have now going ahead with the vision document that will be coming up soon. So, 12th 5-year plan 2012 to 17 had the target to achieve the growth rate of 8.2%. The plan was again the faster, sustainable, more to achieve the growth rate of 4% agriculture sector. The focus was more on the redistribution, social welfare and the gender gap again. Increasing infrastructure spending. So, in this plan it was decided that government will go for expansion in infrastructure activities, secondary education for all, reducing infant and maternal mortalities, complete eastern and western freight corridors, and list top universities in top 200 global universities. For the first time we had understood the role of climate change. So, there was a national action plan for climate change, but it continued till 2015, In the budget on 1st January 2015, we had Government of India had announced the setting of Niti Aayog, National Institution for Transforming India. So, assessment of a planning process. So, now it is time that we should devote some minutes to understand. So, India had 11 successful plans, which means that we had gone for a complete 5 years, 12 plan continued till 2015. So, whatever progress we saw, it has been recorded. But if you compare this, then we find that we had in the beginning years, in the formative years, we had gone for high growth path, thinking about capital output ratio, how we can go for import substitution. So, and there was always back in mind the idea of nationalization of major activities. So, public sector banks, public sector entities were given importance, but after 1970s and in the mid of 80s, we realized that we should be now moving towards more of a market oriented economy. We started giving more preference to the private sector, and private sector became really important to drive the economy. Right. Our opponents, however, argue that because we continued the socialistic pattern, and this particular socialistic pattern did not give that much space for the private sector to grow, though we had conceived the idea of mesh economy, but there was a complete dominance of the nature that we had in terms of socialistic nature, and this nature did not allow the economy to expand at the rate it was supposed to be. So, a few decades just were exhausted in just increasing the capacity. So, this also is linked to the what we had a low growth regime, what is called in terms of Hindu rate of growth, that how we were not able to achieve more than 3.5%, very constant economic growth that we had. Had it been a market oriented economy, then we would have gone at a different pace, and we would have achieved a different level of development. So, but if you compare in terms of numbers, then I have some numbers. For example, in terms of plan, so from first plan I have listed down the target and the actual growth rate. So, you can see that till fourth plan we had passed the growth rate of only once when we had a second plan, though we did not meet the target, but in most of the years we had the growth rate of either 3% or just in the range of 2 to 4%. After fifth plan we moved from 4 to 4.7 and more than 4.7, then the annual plan was launched and that did not work, it gave negative growth. Sixth plan we had a better scenario, and after that we started achieving a higher growth rate. 11th plan it really worked and it gave a good growth. So, we were moved from 2.8 era, 3.5 or 4% era to 8% era, and then we have now Niti Aayog to take care. So, of course, this also gives lot of idea that overall if you just see after 1970s, if you see the progress, then it has not been that bad, especially after 1980s we have consistently done well, except annual plans that we had to introduce in 1990-91 because of political instability, and it achieved the growth rate of 3.4% only. We did not have any target for this, right. In sector wise, if you see in terms of growth rate, then you find that manufacturing has been the most volatile, even agriculture. Sixth plan had the agriculture growth of 5.7, but here in case of 11th plan we saw that if you compare 6th plan and 11th plan, then you find that services sector is continuously doing well, whereas manufacturing is somewhat volatile. So, 9.4%, then 3.3, then 9.3 and 7.9, right. I have also shown the sectoral contribution to GDP, that if I have to just see, so agriculture sector had the share in total GDP of about 51.9% in 1959-51. And you can see that after this 1955 it has been declining, and it has in 2000-2001 its share was just 22.3%. Manufacturing, you can see its share has increased, but it is not in at the rate it was supposed to be or it was envisaged. Then the services sector, it is continuously rising, and the service sector, though it has a share of 34.6% in 1950-51, it has gone up to 56.9%. So, that shows the substantial improvement in the contributions to GDP by this particular sector. So, now India is called services sector driven economy because of this reason, that 51.9 that we had in agriculture, share of agriculture, now we are now moved to 56.9. And manufacturing, it has been always a somewhat increasing trend, but now it looks like there was a dip in 2001 from 21.9 in 1995-96 to 20.6. So, this shows that how we have gone, but it gives the overall picture that we moved from agriculture to services and manufacturing was somewhat left out. In terms of sectoral, in terms of indicators breakup, so here it should be indicators, there is a typo here. So, here in case indicators, if you compare from 1950-51 to 2009-10, you can see that in case of food grain production, we have now moved from 50.8 million tons to we have now 218.2 in 2009-10. Finished steel in million tons, it was 1 million ton in 1950-51, now we are 59.7. Cement again we have moved from 2.7 million tons to 207. Then coal and ignite also, these two are the industrial inputs. So, it has become one of the important contributions. Electricity generated we have moved from 5 to 768, right. Exports also we have done well. So, you can see in terms of $1 million, now we were only in 4 digits, but now we are in 7 digits. So, that also shows that there is a continuous improvement. Foreign exchange reserves also in millions we have moved in the same fashion that we have moved in terms of exports, but export share has not gone up, and that is because we have not given that much emphasis to the manufacturing sector. Population has gone up, birth rate and death rate per 10,000 it has also gone down from 39.9. In brackets you have for death, here also for death. So, you can see that and now it has come down significantly 27.4 to 7.3, right. Birth rate has also come down 39.9, 22.5. Life expectancy at birth 32.5 to 66.6. This is for male. For female 31.7 to 64.2, which means that the lifestyle and the standard of living has improved, and this has resulted in literacy rate male female it has also improved 27.2 to 82.2. and 8.9 to we have a 65.2. Then we have medical services, hospital beds, though we have not done well so much well on this parameter, but we can see that we are still improving and there is a scope for improvement. So, this particular aspect helps a lot. Then the 12th Finance Commission. So, if you ask me from the perspective of how Planning Commission decides about the allocation of money to different states, then the plan document of a 11th plan mentions about this particular criteria used by 12th Finance Commission. So, this I have referred from the 11th plan document. So, it mentions that population was given weight of 25, income distance, which means that how much the state is distant from the national average. So, if it is more, then of course, it should be given higher weight. So, it was 50. Area 10, which means the geographical area. The tax effort, how much effort government has made in terms of collecting taxes, it was given 7.5. Fiscal discipline, which means that how much government has made effort to reduce the deficits, fiscal deficits and revenue deficits, then it has been given 7.5 on that. So, which means that these two are the performance parameters, rest are just based on the area, and in income distance is also can be linked with performance parameter, right. So, what is more important, that if the state is large, area is large, and if the population is large, then of course, those states are going to get more money, right. Then in most of the documents you find the mention of this. So, if you go through any plan document, you will find the mention of this GargMukherjee formula. Under this formula, the population based on 1971 census, it was given 60% weight. Per capita income was given 25, and 25 was further divided into 4 states with lower national average 20, for all states 5, and these indicators are not for a special category states. Special category states are given extra incentive, but these are for the non special category states. performance, tax effort, fiscal management, national objectives was 7.5. Special problems, if the state is facing any kind of a special problem, means if the state is facing a regular flood or having a Maoist problem, then there will be extra incentive given to those states. So that was the idea behind this. So I would like to conclude that we have covered the planning process till 12th plan, and we have also summarized the major findings. We have also highlighted that what are the parameters that we decide about. Now it's time to focus only on contemporary things that we are. So now we will be focusing on Niti Aayog, then we will focusing on disinvestment measures, certain topics which are worth mentioning. So I hope the journey from 1951 till 2017, it was clear that how India has passed through these phases, what all measures were taken, what all shocks India had to face, what were the normal and extraordinary situations where Government of India had to take measures when we discontinued our planning process, which all measures were critically important for India to become modern economy. For instance, the pre-1991 era, post-1991 era, what were the reasons for 1991 debacle that we say always, what were the reasons for the balance payment crisis. So I think all these questions are being answered now, whatever we have covered in our 6 lectures. Now going forward, we will have some more topics to be discussed in a more contemporary context, and even we may go for a few moments in historical context, and we may come back again. So now I think it gives a clear cut idea. I will be also having one session on indicators that we use. For example, a balance sheet. In the union budget, you have different indicators. Those who are from non-economics, it is very difficult to understand. So I will be spending some time to give you some basic idea about that. Thank you so much.